Hey, we're live.
All right, good afternoon and welcome back to the House Environment Committee. Although we previously adjourned, we realized we could get a little bit more testimony this afternoon that we may or may not have been able to get tomorrow. So we are reconvening our meeting and we're starting it over and welcoming a representative from Brigate. Sorry, I don't know your name, but
My name is Liddy
the
Carter, and I'm the new president of Rygate Associates, which is the entity that owns Rygate Power Plant in Rygate, Vermont. And been the owner now for about 3 weeks. The lender to the plant for the last 3.5 years. I also am the managing partner of a company called Mizzen Capital. We are a small business investment company licensed by the Small Business Administration to make loans and invest in small businesses in the United States. So we work all over the country and we have dozens of investments to try and help small businesses grow. We are not a venture capital firm. We lend money to companies, try and keep the owners in place as part of our goal. And we try to support jobs. Every year we report to the Small Business Administration jobs, on carbon captured, on social impact, how many are people who work at the plant are in low and moderate income communities, are not at the plant, but on any one of our companies. So Rygate fit very nicely into our investment strategy. And because of its carbon neutral and the fact that it's in a low and moderate income community, and it's doing something that we find important, which is energy transition. In other words, making energy from other than fossil fuels. It's one of the 4 sectors of our focus. And as the environment committee, an energy committee, I guess it's obviously important to you as well to understand where the power is coming from. And at Rygate, what we do is we burn wood chips that come from the sort of the unused low value portion of the trees that are harvested for other purposes. So the reason we're now the owner is that this plant is undergoing a development to increase its efficiency. And it's a 35-year-old plant, so no surprise that it needs a little upgrade. And that's what we've been undertaking. The goal is just very simply to, there were some other plans in the works. Those plans became untenable in the face of tariffs. And that's the point at which we took it over. They became untenable economically. So now we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to be drying wood chips and burning dry wood chips in the plant. The other plan was to sell dry wood chips. That's very difficult to sell those at this point. So now we're going to burn them in the plant and increase the efficiency that way. We also are going to consider doing some ancillary development at the site for a solar aspect. The site has an interconnection and about 50 acres of flat fallow fields. So it's an easy, as those things go, opportunity to install batteries and a solar plant. In fact, I ran over here from a meeting I was having with a man who's very, very knowledgeable about that area here in Vermont. We have, I think, very good support from the logging community. There were some issues at the plant at various times about paying loggers. That has not been the case any longer. We certify for over a year now. Every single quarter we've been paying within a week of the deliveries. And consequently, no surprise, the deliveries are up, and our company financed that evolution. I think our final sort of request is that we need about a year to go from what the prior owners had spec'd out and was workable to a slightly new plan that will, as I mentioned, use the chips internally rather than trying to sell them. And we'll be drying the wood chips in a different way, using domestically sourced equipment rather than what they had proposed, which was to buy them. Very efficient system, combination of a Swiss machine and a Spanish machine, where they're doing a lot of this kind of work very efficiently, we're not going to be buying that equipment. We're going to be buying other equipment that we get here in the US. So we don't have the tariffs to deal with, and it's more quickly available and be able to implement it as quickly as possible. Because as the owner, it's a whole lot better for us to get this done as fast as possible. The efficiency will also benefit us. So that's our goal, and that's what we're asking for in this legislation, is a 1-year pushback of all the dates in our power purchase agreement, except the final date, which does not change.
So we are no longer the Energy Committee, we're just Environment now, but there are a few of us who were part of the conversations last biennium on this. So thank you for that overview. I want to understand how much the efficiency improves with the dried chips, and how are you going to dry the chips that are at your, how are you going to dry them?
We have a lot of excess heat at the plant. Comes in 2 ways. We have a cooling tower that takes hot water from the compressor and cools it from about 100 degrees down to about 60 degrees. And that's a source of heat that's accessible to us. And then we also have a stack where the temperature is about 300 degrees. And that's what the prior owners were looking at doing. Still possible that we'll be able to use that, but that is a more complicated process because it's a thermodynamic process, and you have to be very, very careful. Just like in your fireplace, if you have something stuck in your chimney, things don't draw as well, right? I mean, we've all been there. So that smoky living room is not what we want in this power plant. So we're very careful about taking it out of the stack, and it's a simpler process to take the plumbing, which is taking hot water. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take that hot water, run it into about 120-foot long dryer with a perforated belt. This is standard technology. You have a perforated belt, a lot of fans with warm air, and you just pull the moisture out of the chips. That way, spread them out. That's what you do.
And then you use those chips in your plant.
And we pour them straight back into the plant.
And so how much is this increasing your efficiency?
Well, the goal is 50%, but I have to say that there's dried wood chips that'll help. It'll go a long way toward probably most of the way. But we're doing a number of other things at the plant itself that just help, that weren't done when the plant was built 30 years ago, or they were done when it was built 30 years ago, and frankly, they're not working quite as well as they did. As an example, the plant is fully insulated, the boiler is fully insulated. We're going to improve that insulation. It's 35 years old. And so there's much more high efficiency insulation. The less heat you lose out the sides of the plant, the less fuel you burn to make the same amount of heat. That's a big component of what we're doing. And it's something we're doing anyway, that they were going to do anyway. That's not new, and it doesn't need another year. What needs a year is pulling the heat out of the cooling towers, making sure it's the right equipment positioned in the right way, and that it all answers your particular question about how much, what is this going to do? Before you do this, you have to do that you have to get those numbers exactly right. And we're working on that right now. We have an engineering firm working on it, as they have been for the last 2 years diligently. Now they have to pivot because the last 8 months of work, which was not just as picking the equipment, but then you have to design it into the plant, make sure your power obligations are correct, all those other things. That's what has to be done now. So that's what we're working on, which will answer the question you've just asked me.
Representative Sakowicz.
Yeah, so the previous plan would have used the waste heat from the stack,
Correct?
but it would not have used the waste heat from the cooling
Correct.
tower at all. So I guess this is more, I'm just curious, like it seems like you would want to use the waste heat no matter where it comes from. So do you know why the waste heat from the cooling tower wasn't considered being used?
It was considered.
was considered, but why?
Why it isn't
Yeah,
one of the things?
that's the real
It's obvious.
question, right?
Right. As I understand it, and I've spoken to the engineer about it, but I wasn't in the room, so I don't know. There was a lot of complication around what's the best way to pull the heat off. Traditionally, it's coming off the cooling tower because it's so much easier. It's plumbing. In order to there are some site constraints, and I guess the length of the belt determines how dry you're going to get those chips. And the location where they had been looking at putting the belt constrained the length of the belt so that they needed a higher heat input to get it done in a certain period or a certain length. And we're repositioning that belt into a much larger space, which will enable us to do it very differently. And that's why the engineer thinks we can do it. But to be fair, it wouldn't have worked where they were positioning it. And the reason they positioned it there was because they were originally going to be making wood pellets. And so they'd done all this engineering and they were going to make wood pellets, which would have been great, but they couldn't get the permit for the air quality from the Environmental Protection Agency, federal, because of something about the overall regional air quality and the volatile organic compounds. When you take a wood chip and you grind it into sawdust to then press it into a pellet, it releases a lot of VOCs. And that became a problem. I was thinking of VOCs coming off in heat, but because this is a low heat environment, you're not really driving off the VOCs, you're just driving off the air, the water. So it's a very important heat balance to make sure you don't go too hot. But when you're grinding, you're going to release them somehow. And that became the problem. That's why they had to pivot away from the pellets, start just drying chips and selling them in order to achieve the EPA air permit.
So it almost sounds like now that this was even before the tariff issue, that this was already a problem.
No,
the VOC?
that pivot was 2 years ago. That was very early on. So they had moved away from the pellets. I mean, yes, it's an engineering development project, and they did several iterations, no doubt. But what they had as of last summer, I guess last July, when they got, I'm sorry, it was even in May, when they got their final permits, which is the point at which you can really start engineering, right? You can't, there's no point in engineering something to the level that it is currently engineered until you know you're allowed to do it. So they got the permits, then they finalized the engineering, and then they finalized the financing, and then the financing fell through because UBS, Switzerland, United Bank of Switzerland, and the Export-Import Bank of Spain is not making these loans anymore to a group in the United States that is now charging tariffs of upwards of 45% on this kinds of equipment, because they know it's not viable. It just doesn't economically work. So it was not the plan for me to be here. It was the plan for them to implement a plant and to have it financed by these third parties. But this issue of shooting away from the pellets, that happened quite a while ago,
So that was solved.
2 years ago. I'm sorry, I thought that's what you were asking, but maybe I went down a rabbit hole there. I don't know.
That's okay. So just so I understand, just moving along a little bit. So now the plant will be taking the wood chips that come to it, that the plant itself burns, and it's going to be drying those so that its internal combustion process is more efficient.
Exactly. Very simple.
And do you know if what sort of the difference in the amount of material they'll be processing in terms of drying will be? Is it a lot less than it would have been under with the pellet plant?
we'll tell you our estimate today is about 20% less. But I beg you, do not hold me to that number.
We're just interested in a very rough figure. That's helpful. Thank you.
Further questions?
I
Representative Austin and then
I
North.
have a question. Stay.
Uh,
It'll be quick.
I mean,
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Really so grateful.
I appreciate you saying that. It's hard.
Yeah, I
Thank
know.
you.
And the fact that you pivoted was just fantastic. So.
It's
thank you.
nice of you to say that. It's hard.
Representative North.
Yeah, I had just a question about we're targeting a 50% efficiency improvement. What metric is it that we're trying to improve by 50%? Which efficiency measure? Is it the cost of electricity or the conversion of from biomass into electricity? Or which measurement is it we're trying to improve?
It's such a great question because there's so many ways to think about that. So what we use is what the Department of Natural Resources uses in a calculation that I'm trying to think of exactly what document it's in. It's public.
Okay,
Um,
so it's defined and it's
It's-
consistent. thing
yes, and
across.
roughly it's value of energy going in versus value of energy produced. And there's a whole mass balance of stuff that's part of that. And it includes thermal energy in and electric energy in and all these inputs and then all these outputs. It's a long spreadsheet, but it's well defined. And I think that's probably enough detail because otherwise I have to go to my laptop.
It's
yeah.
it's an energy to an energy conversion. It has nothing to do with dollars and cents or
Nothing.
rate of electricity.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all so much for your interest, time, and for letting us do this. We are excited and I do hope you'll support our request for an extension. Thank you.
Hey, Ellen, would you join us? Yeah, we have a side-by-side from O'Grady on 319 and the last section is this date extension. You're the drafter.
Yes. Ellen Jakowski, Office of Legislative Counsel. So yes, section 33 of draft 5.1 that Senate Natural Resources voted out has the Rygate language. So the Rygate statute is 30 VSA 8009. This is a statute that's specific to Rygate. It has a set of jargon that doesn't say Rygate, but implies Rygate. So it's the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement. This is referring to a base load, so running 24/7 power source that uses biomass. Rygate is the only one that fits that description. The McNeil power plant does not fit under the definitions in the statute, so this only applies to Rygate. And what the statute overall requires is that all of the power generated by Rygate is purchased by all of the state's utilities based on their pro rata share of their electricity. So there's an exemption from Burlington because they have their own biomass facility, but all the other electric utilities divide up the power that Rygate is generating and they purchase it based on a rate that was set by the Public Utility Commission. A few years ago, that rate was set to expire in 2022, and there was a request to extend the power, essentially what is a power purchase agreement with the state utilities, and the legislature added this subsection K to 8009, which sets out a timeline by which Rygate is required to make a number of make a number of demonstrations that they're improving the plant on a set schedule to get to this overall efficiency increase by at least 50%. So there are a number of deadlines in the statute by which Rygate has to do something. Last year, they did come in and ask for a 1-year extension and the legislature granted that. And so that is their ask again this year. The dates in subdivision K, starting on page 65, explained all the dates by 1 year, including one of the dates that has already passed because I believe it is their intention to refile their documentation with the PUC and the department because their plans have changed. So there is a requirement that they begin making these efficiency upgrades with the certifications from, they have their plan and then the engineering certification. They have until, currently in the statute, there is a deadline in the October of this year. If they were to miss that deadline, the existing power purchase agreement would cease and the utilities would no longer be required to purchase the power from Reigate and pay for the power. So if you do not change the dates in the statute, it is likely that the power purchase agreement would terminate and Reigate would not be being paid by the utilities. The statute extends the power purchase agreement from 2022 to 2032. The end date of 2032 is not ending, is not being extended in this amendment. It is being kept at 2032, but all the other dates within it are being pushed back a year. Did you want me to do the walkthrough of the subdivisions of K with each date?
I don't think we need that.
Okay.
Members have questions for Ellen? The Energy Committee is going to be taking this up, but I thought that it would be of interest to this committee and also since it's being added to H319, which is our bill, I figured it would also be of interest to us. So I just wanted us to be oriented to the request and understand it and be able to ask questions if we had them. So we'll hear back from the Energy Committee on their thoughts on it. Representative North.
I probably would have been better to ask Carter this question, but do we know if this, since this is a base load provider of electricity, do we know if the price of energy that they produce is more or less than? I mean, it depends if we're making like GMP and others required to purchase these folks' electricity. Is this electricity more expensive than others? Do we know?
I believe the rate is 10 cents. So there is a variety of different rates paid for different programs. I don't know if there's known comparable rates for other biomass baseload.
Oh, so there's a set rate?
Yes.
Okay, they get 10 cents per
Yes.
kilowatt hour.
Yeah, so the PUC set a rate, and under this statute, you've just been extending the rate that was already determined. And so one of the dates that is in here, I guess I should mention, is after the efficiency updates are made, the PUC is going to do a new rate determination based on the avoided costs. And so there will be a new rate determination under this amendment. It would take place for the year starting in 2028. Under the existing statute, it would start in 2027. The idea under the prior scheme being they would get 5 years to update the plant and then have 5 years of a new rate determined by the PUC. We're pushing that back a year, so the new rate would only be available for them for 4 years.
Great. Thanks for joining us on short notice, everyone. We'll let you know if we have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.